Troy Newman.
It's truly a pleasure to be here. I have the utmost respect for the survivors and for Mark Harrington. And if you want to know what's going on, you want to get involved as an intern or something, both those organizations are fabulous. I know a lot of you survivors are here. How many, just by a show of hands, were at the earlier survivor camp in California? Great, you guys made a great trip. Thank you. Give us a hand. Very good. Listen, it is a pleasure to be here. There's a lot of information I want to go over here tonight. And I'll try not to make it a death by PowerPoint, which sometimes, if any of you ever sat through a lecture like that, hopefully, and I'm a little biased that my PowerPoints are a little better than your lecture in college. But I want to tell you a story real quick and incorporate into the talk tonight that this morning I went to your Petroglyph National Monument. And I thought, this is something I've got to see. It was about 95 degrees this morning, and I went for a little 2-mile hike through the desert. I didn't expect it to be quite that hot, but I went out to the desert to see something. And before I went there, I went to the visitor center, and I heard the whole spiel on what was going on. And this is basically it. The ancient cultures were pure. They lived in unity. They had spiritual significance. The spirits drifted from the river up to the mountains, and they went and they carved their faces there. But then we really don't know. And that, after every sentence, she would say, well, I really don't know. We really don't know exactly what they were, but you can go up there and look. And so because they don't really know, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I'm going to give you what my takeaway was. I'm a student of history, and I've looked around, and I went and looked at these petroglyphs myself, and I've seen them down in Arizona, and I've seen them in Mexico, and I think they're interesting. But because they didn't know, and again, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I'm going to give you what my takeaway was. Essentially, there's 24,000 pieces of art up there in the mountains, or the hills here in Albuquerque, and somewhere between the time of Christ and about 1500 AD, these were done. And I don't know if they were kind of disgruntled teenagers doing graffiti up there, like they do in LA all across the train tracks and so forth, but they're art nonetheless. But I think they depict some cultural problems, and maybe some cultural problems that we're seeing today. And I know just a little bit about agrarian living because I live in Kansas. I grew up in San Diego. For 35 years, I lived in San Diego, and then I moved to the United States. And I know a little bit about the agrarian community. And when it comes to people that lived on a subsistence diet, they were probably pretty hungry. Their average lifespan was about 30 years old. On top of that, we knew that the warring Indians, both the Comanches were sometimes, they're very nomadic, they were sometimes cannibalistic. They also engaged in slavery. And so did the Apaches. And so we also know that the Pueblo Indians that inhabited this region around that time traded with Indians further south, including the Mayans. Okay, and last year I was in Cancun area, and I traveled over to Chichen Itza, and I've got a picture of me like this, you know. Walk like an Egyptian, remember that? In front of the Mayan temple that is now defunct. And in that Mayan temple, they practice human sacrifice to a degree that we barely know across the globe. And so this culture here traded with them, and there may have been some slavery going on and trading of human lives back and forth. We do know that the parrots were traded back and forth for bits of turquoise, and some of the Pueblo Indians or clans are named after these parrots. So we have a desperate, underfed people group that crawled up into the hills, maybe to get warm, and they chiseled out what they felt in their hearts. Because the Bible says in Proverbs 23, as a man thinks, so he is also. It also says that out of the mouth, the heart speaks, or maybe out of the pen, or out of the chiseling of a rock. So what I saw were food depictions. These people were probably pretty hungry. I saw pictures of deer, pictures of impaled deer with spears, fish, ducks, birds, lots of snakes. And I'm told some of those faces there are death faces. Death faces. But rather dark and abstract paintings. In a way, my 7-year-old does better with a pencil and a piece of paper, but I'm not judging. Maybe these people were just poor. and they're fed up, trying to get warm on the rocks that were warmed by the sun, maybe looking in the rocks for a lizard or a snake to eat and provide their breakfast or their meal for the week, or maybe even to hide from the Comanche, which were a real, warring, horrible people. Again, I'm not judging, but if you judge by history, they were very desperate people. But then something wonderful happened. What happened in 1492? Columbus sailed the ocean, yes. And so the Spaniards started to come up, and they brought with them their armaments, and they brought with them the friars, and they brought with them Christianity. And the culture began to change. And a valley that once contained at maximum, a fertile valley like Albuquerque, 1,000 people, maximum, began to change, and the agriculture began to change, and the culture began to change, and the rocks began to depict real living culture of grazing animals and crosses. And they began to build houses, and the valley flourished. The priests provided a faith-centered life of redemption centered on the fact that all life is valuable. Human slavery stopped. The carnage of the Indian warfare eventually stopped, and the rocks began to see dramatic changes. So it went on for a few hundred years. That's how America was built. But now things are beginning to change a little bit back toward the pagan culture. And we're seeing the reemergence of death in our culture, and a worship of death and child sacrifice. So as dark as it seems, I hope that this talk brings a little bit of encouragement to you, because it's not as bad as it seems, and we're winning the war for the preborn children as we speak. We wrote this book, Cheryl Sullinger and I wrote it in December of last year and January of this year. And as we analyze the facts, I'm going to go through lots of numbers. If you want to get a copy of this booklet, it's on prolifenation.com. It's 60 small pages. You can read it in a span of 45 minutes. All the facts are there. It's all footnoted. You can get to anything that you want via this. But I'm going to breeze through these facts because I think they're very, very important. When we look at the number of years that we have had decriminalized abortion, it can never be legal. That which God calls illegal can never be legal. Okay, so since the decriminalization of abortion 40 years ago, we haven't seen a lot of change until the last 15 years. And there are certain things that we can do to hasten the end of abortion. We're not here just to march in place. You know, if you march in place or you march toward a location, you're using the same exact amount of energy. You're using the same, expelling the same amount of noise and energy and consuming the calories is what I was looking for, as if you were marching forward. And we can no longer afford to march in place. We have to put together a strategic vision to hasten the day, to bring about the day when abortion is absolutely ended. That's why we're here. We're not here just to be pro-life, but we're here in deed and purpose to end abortion. So let's get started. First of all, the history of bruising defeats. As we look back on several election cycles, South Dakota put forward in 2006 and in 2008 essentially a proposition to end all abortion. I was up there on both occasions, and we lost respectively by 12 and 10%. The polling data after the first law said if you included a rape and incest exception, we would win. And I won't go through all the reasons why it was a loss. But suffice it to say, in one of the most conservative states in the Union, we lost. We did. We absolutely lost by 10 and 12%. In California, it was a bill which is a 24-hour waiting period, an informed consent bill. It was what a lot of states have already enacted all in one bill. And again, the polling data said that we should win this. But Planned Parenthood put forth, I think, about 5-to-1 funding against this measure 3 different times. And we lost by 4%, 8%, and 6%. And I know some of the people that personally funded this measure, and they spent a lot of money, some people personal fortunes. And it was a huge defeat. Colorado, I think, is worth noting because in 2006 and in 2008, they put forward what is called the personhood bill. And a lot of people are jumping on this, and I really like the idea of establishing, this new terminology, personhood for the preborn baby. But as a tactic of putting this on the ballot and letting people decide whether or not we should allow personhood to be granted to children, of course I believe they're already persons, and we shouldn't put that up to a vote, but that's beside the point. In Colorado, lost by a bruising 46%, and then in an off-year election, 41%. That is a huge loss. In Mississippi, the same thing was put forward, and in a case where it was an off-year election, they should have won. Every single statewide office holder endorsed this project. They spent millions of dollars. It's in one of the most conservative states of the union. They lost by 16%. In the last election cycle, Florida put forth a measure that simply said that taxpayer dollars in the state of Florida were not going to be used on abortion services. Okay, it's just that simple. Unless it's already mandated by the federal government. So it was a really benign, low-key bill, hoping to gather support. Some pro-lifers opposed it because it wasn't strong enough, but it lost by 10%. We all remember Aiken. Remember Todd Aiken in Missouri? Now, Missouri is an interesting state because it's extremely conservative, and there was no more of a polarizing Senate fight than Claire McCaskill and Todd Aiken. Todd Aiken used to rescue with Operation Rescue back in the early 90s. He was a congressman, won a hard-fought primary, and then was the candidate, the GOP candidate for Senate, hardcore pro-life. On the other side, you have Claire McCaskill. Never met an abortion she didn't endorse. Voted for Obamacare, radical, hardcore abortion. Hardcore as they come. The swing vote in between what she lost by, or what she won by and he lost by, 26%. Huge swing. Pretty much an aching defeat, no pun intended. In Murdoch, that was in Indiana, he lost by 10%. And again, same sort of story. The rape comments, which I'm going to get to in a minute. And again, in 2012, the presidential election, when you look at those who self-identified in the exit polls as pro-life versus pro-choice, it was a defeat by 16%. So the question is, why are we losing this? I thought, Troy, you keep talking about why we're winning. And it's easy. It's because bad cases make for bad law. Okay, I want you to memorize that if you go to law school. Remember this. Bad cases make for bad law. Roe versus Wade was presented to us on the proposition that we needed abortion in the cases of rape and incest, the most extreme cases where they pull on your heartstrings and they make you think that the world will come to an end. The world will come to an end if this woman doesn't get an abortion. And that's what they did in each of the previous cases. The pro-abortion side said that if you pass this law, then women who are the victims of rape or incest, or this woman is going to die, that will be outlawed if you pass this bill. They go to the most extreme position. And so in the case of Claire McCaskill, when you vote against Todd Aiken, who's radically pro-life, and you vote for Claire McCaskill, not only do you get the hard cases, the cases are less than 1%, less than 2%, depending on who's gauging it, you get 100% of abortions, the late-term abortions. You get Kermit Gosnell. That's what you get. And it's because we've been ineffective in framing our position to the electorate. We've been ineffective. When you look at these numbers, the people, this is according to the Gallup poll, and these numbers go way back, 83% of the people say abortion should be legal in the case of rape or incest. I am not one of those 83%, and I'm sure that you are not either. You never punish the baby for the crimes of the father. It's not the baby's fault, okay? Hang the guy up by the short hairs, throw him away in prison and toss the key. That's not the pro-life position. But in order to win, we need to change the hearts and minds of the electorate and bring them along. When we look at the polling data, same Gallup poll, the green line here represents those who are pro-choice, and the light green line represents those who are pro-life. These are people that will self-identify. You walk up to them and say, are you pro-life or are you pro-choice? Here's what they say. Now you can see that we're starting to win on the side of pro-life. This did not translate into the polling data when you looked at those who voted for the GOP or the Democrat nominee in the last election cycle. So the question is, why? And that's when you have to dig down just a little further. Now the top line here, these are the people that say that abortion should only be legal under certain circumstances. These are the people that say, you know, if the girl is 10 years old and she's raped by her stepdad or her dad or some extreme case, abortion should be legal only in these circumstances. You look down here, these two numbers are almost identical throughout the last 20-something years. And the people who say that abortion should be legal under all circumstances, and the people that say that abortion should be illegal in all circumstances, remain about the same. So the people that are functionally pro-life, but allow for abortion under only certain rare circumstances, are the majority. These are the people we need to reach. This is what they call the mushy middle. These are the people I like to call functionally pro-life. You take that 52% of the people that lean pro-life, that are just not fully informed as we are on all the issues. You couple that with the 20% of the people that say abortion should be illegal under all circumstances. Again, 52% of the people say abortion should be legal under only legal under certain circumstances, extreme circumstances, and you combine that with the pro-lifers, you get a 72% voting bloc. That's a super majority, my friends. That's a super majority. And this is why when we frame the debate, we win. You've heard the saying, he who frames the argument wins the debate. We have been allowing the other side to frame the debate again and again and again. Todd Aiken is a prime example. The war on women is another prime example. Mitt Romney wants to take away your birth control pills. You'll never be able to adopt a baby again with Mitt Romney. But Obama, abortion's above his pay grade. He just wants to stop the war on women. Friends, that's an argument that sells to the low information voter. You look at the Gallup poll, we have the moral high ground. 49% of the people say abortion is immoral versus 42% that say it's morally acceptable. So much for the Religious Coalition on Reproductive Choice. This is something that's completely outside the realm of religion. I'm dying, I have 7%. Do we have a power cord? Power. Christina, I need power. And when you start looking into late-term abortions, it gets even better. You know, I was interviewed